any bonds today? Any bonds today?
Over 50 years ago, at a time when America was desperate for gasoline, money for war bonds, and a few good men, something extraordinary happened. Young women pilots from all over the United States quit their jobs and left the safety of their homes and families to come to Texas. Some came by car, some by bus, others hitched or rode the train, a few even came by plane. But they all paid their own way, and they came to Texas because their country needed them. They came to Texas because they loved to fly. It all began in 1942 when there was a severe shortage of male pilots. Jacqueline Cochran, America's foremost woman pilot, convinced General Hap Arnold, Chief of the Army Air Forces, that she could bring together a corps of seasoned women pilots and train them the Army way, so they could replace the male pilots being sent overseas. When they heard the call, 25,000 young women from all over America volunteered. But the requirements for acceptance for women were tougher than for men, so only 1,830 of the 25,000 were eventually accepted for training. The first class of 29 young women began their training under extremely adverse conditions at the municipal airport in Houston, Texas. They flew dilapidated civilian aircraft that had been taken over by the Army until military trainers were made available. 3 months later, at Avenger Field near Sweetwater, Texas, the United States Army transformed a base that was being used to train male cadets into the first and only military flying school for women in the United States. When each class of trainees arrived at Avenger Field, they were given no special treatment. They lived in barracks, 6 cots to a room, ate in a mess hall, followed a strict set of regulations, and marched. They marched everywhere. They marched to the barracks, they marched to the mess hall, they marched to their classes, and they even marched to the flight line. Their training program was exactly the same one as the male cadets were going through all over the country. Ground school, flight school, cross-country flying, night flying, instrument flying, link trainer flying, and daily calisthenics. At the end of each phase of flight training, they were given Army check rides by Army Air Force officers in good weather or bad weather, dust storms or snow up to the propellers. Those who didn't pass washed out, packed their bags, and paid their way back home. Of the original 1,830 young women who entered flight training, only 1,037 graduated. They were honored with a dress parade at a graduation ceremony where they received their Wasp wings and their Army orders and officially became Women Air Force Service Pilots, the first women in the history of America to fly military aircraft. Their Army orders directed them to report to bases all over the country. To the Air Transport Command, the Air Training Command, the 1st, 2nd, and 4th Air Force, the Proving Ground Command, the Weather Wing, the Air Technical Service Command, and the Troop Carrier Command. They wore official uniforms, lived in officers' quarters, and took their orders from Air Force commanders. They flew every type of aircraft the Air Force owned, trainers, fighters, bombers, in all kinds of weather and under all kinds of adverse conditions. They were flight instructors, and they were test pilots for new planes, old planes, rebuilt planes, and some planes that male pilots refused to fly. They flew every type of mission the Air Force had except combat. They ferried personnel, hauled cargo, delivered aircraft from factories to bases and factory points of embarkation, and towed targets for ground-to-air anti-aircraft gunnery practice, and towed targets for air-to-air gunnery practice, always aware that the gunnery trainees were using live ammunition. In less than 2 years, the women Air Force service pilots flew more than 60 million miles for their country. 38 of these brave young women made the supreme sacrifice. They too went home, but with no help from the country they'd given their lives for. Unlike the male pilots, Wasp families or friends had to pay for their final trip home. On December the 7th, 1944, 3 years after Pearl Harbor, General Arnold, the commanding general of the Air Force, was the keynote speaker at the graduation ceremonies for the last class of Wasp. General Arnold said, "You and more than 900 of your sisters have shown that you can fly wingtip to wingtip with your brothers. If ever there was any doubt in anyone's mind that women can become skillful pilots, the Wasp have dispelled that doubt." I want to stress how valuable I believe the whole WASP program has been for the country. We know that you can handle our latest fighters, our heaviest bombers. We know that you're capable of ferrying, target towing, flying training, test flying, and the countless other activities which you've proved you can do. So, on this last graduation day, I salute you and all WASP. We of the Army Air Force are proud of you. We will never forget our debt to you. 11 days later, on December the 20th, 1944, over the objections of General Arnold, the WASP were disbanded. At hundreds of air bases all over America, the WASP hung up their Army parachutes for the last time. They packed their bags, and they paid their way back home. There were no GI benefits, no fringe benefits, and no dress parades. Just the satisfaction of knowing that they'd done their duty and they'd completed their mission. Despite General Arnold's pledge that the Air Force would never forget them, it did. And so did America.